Please hold whilst we connect you to Redacted.
This is Lucy Bishop.
And this is Fraser Greenfield.
And this is Inna Lobel. And you are listening to Redacted.
Inna Lobel is a product designer working out of New York, where she's Frog's head of industrial design for North America. Before joining Frog, she was a senior product designer at Apple and a research assistant at MIT's Media Lab, where she initially studied design and engineering. Good morning, Inna, and welcome to the show.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
So, Inna, could you introduce yourself? Who is Inna Lobel?
I'm driven by design, curiosity, and creativity. I love exploring how emerging technologies can shape the future and open up new possibilities. And I also really like to think about the business side of design and launching products and really ensuring that whatever we create can go out into the world. And I enjoy spending time with others to come up with projects. I love understanding people. I really enjoy solving really difficult challenges and dreaming together about what could be and should be and shaping our experiences. Professionally, I'm head of industrial design at Frog, where I lead a team of designers. I'm also an adjunct professor at NYU and a mentor in the startup community.
How did you discover industrial design?
I discovered it through a class that I took called Product Design and Development. Before this, there were so many different things that I was exploring. And when I took this class, we worked in really small cross-disciplinary teams with students from design, engineering, and business. And together we collaborated on creating a product along the entire design process. So we identified a need, we designed and built prototypes, we developed a go-to-market strategy. And I really loved crossing boundaries and drawing from all these different disciplines. And it was just a lot of fun. It was definitely a defining moment for me where I realized that my curiosity about all these different things could come together in a career. And design was really that perfect intersection for me between those things.
Do you remember what the project was? What was the problem that you identified and what you made to solve it?
We were students, but the problem that we identified was the camelbacks. I don't know if you know this. It's a squishy water bottle that you have in a backpack.
Yeah, with a little straw.
Yeah, exactly. And the problem was they get really disgusting and there's no way to clean it. We went to some outdoor stores and we talked to people around, and it seemed like everybody was having this problem. So we designed something like that.
The ultimate pipe cleaner.
Well, it was actually a way that you could use a zipper type enclosure so that it would open and so that you could clean it and you could dry it.
Oh, cool. That's so interesting because I've done a lot of research on those waterproof IP67 zippers and never once did I think a straw.
It was very interesting because since then, when I've looked back into that category, I think Camelback has actually come up with something like that. But when we were doing that project, there was nothing like it on the market.
It's amazing. You must have been onto something then.
We must have been, yeah.
What kind of stuff did you find inside these camelbacks?
I don't know if we actually found anything that was disgusting, but I think just having a water bottle that you can't clean, I think that was a really psychological pain point for people. And I'm sure there was stuff growing in it that we didn't notice.
I feel like there's two camps of people, the people who are really concerned about what's in their drink bottle and the people like me who just never think about it.
Yeah, it's probably for the best. Redacted.
As I understand it, you studied mechanical engineering in addition to industrial design. Was there a decision process behind that? And did you find it changed the way you thought about things?
I think I've always been very curious about different ways to approach problems. And I've always really liked being able to execute whatever we design. And so I think for me, it was looking at problems from two different perspectives and being able to have the toolkit to push a little bit further into the process. I studied a hodgepodge of different things where I think ultimately I became somebody that was very multidisciplinary in my approach and my thinking and my ability to relate to the teams that I work with.
And why did you choose to mix and match 2 degrees so early instead of coming back later on?
I studied at the MIT Media Lab. When I think about my education, I feel like that's very representative of how I was thinking. People were really bold. And for me, it was thinking about the future. How do we prototype that and bring that into the present and really interrogate whether that's a good idea or not? And in some sense, I think the Media Lab prides itself on being not just multidisciplinary, but they say anti-disciplinary.
Oh, I love that.
Really trying to almost move away from disciplines because sometimes when you're in one, you can have blinders. And also, I think it can be very intimidating to go into a new space. It was very much encouraged there to try something new, try something that you'd never done before, and to just go for it and learn. And I think that it's very much an approach that I've taken with me in my career.
Well, we've had somebody on the podcast previously who described industrial design as not being disciplined at all. We're all up in everybody's stuff. We're like, oh, can we change it? Can we do that?
Can you just explain what MIT Media Lab actually is to someone who doesn't know?
The way that I think about it is it's a research lab within MIT. It's a lab that often thinks about what kind of opportunities do new technologies offer and how can we design the future. And everybody that's there has a very different area that they think about or work within. There's a lab that's called Lifelong Kindergarten. It's a lab that thinks about what are ways that we can help people learn, both kids, adults, but thinking about learning. They invented Scratch, which is a visual programming system for kids. It's just a really interesting place to explore the frontiers of technology.
And would you say that was your first big break, or did you move somewhere else as your first big career move?
I was really reflecting on this question. I think about big breaks in terms of projects. So, what are things that have really changed the way your trajectory or the way you do things? My first big career move itself was probably this project that I worked on within Apple on multi touch haptics. It was something that I worked on toward the end of my career at Apple, but fairly junior in my career as a whole. What I learned at that time was that if you vocalize what you're interested in, that your odds and chances of working on that are quite high. It can be really intimidating to do that, but also really rewarding. When I started to tell people that I was really interested in working on emerging technologies and looking at what's the future of our product line, I got the opportunity to work on haptics and thinking about how would that integrate into the products, how would it impact the user experience and the products itself. Haptics is something where we can receive feedback through touch, and it's possible to make someone feel like they clicked a button, for example, even when there's no button. And it works on a combination of different senses. So you feel something, you hear something, you see something. And when I started working in this space, one of the well known problems was that you really could only create one of these virtual buttons one at a time for a product. So it was essentially a one touch experience. It was also very commonly thought that it wasn't even something that you could do in a larger product. So I spent a lot of time experimenting and thinking about this problem and thinking about was there actually a different way to do this? Spent a lot of time researching new technologies and materials, flew to Japan to see if we could make different prototypes. It was a really exciting time where we developed this multi-touch haptics from scratch, but also really thinking about what would be the implications of that for the product? What is the kind of experience that we might want for our devices? And so for me, I think it was one of those shifts where I really learned that it's important to advocate for yourself and the kind of work that you want to do within your career.
So, what were the implications of this project?
Being able to put a keyboard on a product is one, and I probably can't talk too much about the others.
So, wait, are you the reason why my phone shakes when I type?
It's not, but it's part of that same discipline.
Okay. You went from MIT Media Lab to Apple. Could you walk us through that process?
I got that job actually just by applying online. I think that's pretty rare these days to do that. But yeah, it still happens that you can apply online and somebody sees your resume, portfolio, and calls you in.
I occasionally see jobs for Apple on LinkedIn and I'm like, oh, I'm glad I'm not that HR person.
600 applications in 6 hours?
Probably, yeah. This is Inna Lobel, Inna Lobel, Inna Lobel, Inna Lobel, Inna Lobel, Inna Lobel, and you are listening to Redacted. 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 Redacted.
Hey, it's Louis here. At Redacted, we believe that everyone has a role to play in making the world a little better, even in the smallest ways. Sometimes shining a light on the good stuff is all it takes to spark change or rally others to a bigger cause. This is why we've teamed up with the Better Future Awards, a global network of designers that celebrate products, studios, and ideas making a real difference. Whether it's environmental impact, social equity, or economic outcomes, these awards highlight the work that pushes us forward. To find out more about the Better Future Awards, head to thebetterfutureawards.com. That's betterfutureawards.com. You can also find a link at the top of the show notes. Redacted, 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 redacted.
So, when you first graduated, what kind of challenges did you face? How did you overcome them? And do you see any parallels today?
The challenge is that I'm very multidisciplinary. Particularly when you're starting out, that breadth can play against you a little bit because when you're talking to a hiring manager or something like that, it could come across as you don't really know who you are or what you're interested in. I realized that that could be an issue when I was still at the Media Lab because I started having conversations and talking to people. And so I realized that I would have to be a T-shaped person, right? Is that I would have to say, like, okay, I'm really interested in this and really double down. And then, of course, acknowledge that I brought lots of different things to the table.
Is this because people would say that you're too engineering to be a true industrial designer and you're too industrial designer to be too true engineering?
Yeah, I think something like that. And I think the other thing that can often happen, and I often see when we review work too, is that it's also like you can do a little bit of web design and you can do a little bit of this other thing. And so it can be very tricky when somebody puts a portfolio and they have 6 things and two in one, two in another, and two in a third.
And no one wants a master of nothing.
I think that's exactly right.
Or more to the point, you don't want to work at a place that wants the master of nothing.
Exactly. And so I think early on, that was something that I had to overcome. But from where I am now, being multidisciplinary is probably one of my greatest strengths. This challenge at that time, it was generalist versus specialist. But I think that what it really speaks to is really the need constantly to be cognizant of what your skills are, where's the market moving, where's the intersection between what's relevant and what you're interested in. And I think right now, a lot of people are thinking about that because, for example, AI is reshaping industries so strongly that nobody really knows yet what's going to be the full impact of that for any industry or career path. And so having that ability to think about the context, the changes, and kind of your place within that is something that I think is going to continue to be relevant for everybody.
How do you articulate the value of being a multidisciplinary designer in a business? Because I know that at least when I was early career, multidisciplinary was a sign that you weren't good at anything and you were just trying to find whatever role would pay you a living wage.
That's exactly right. I think it's really helpful to pick a lane. Maybe you could think about it like an information hierarchy or something like that, but really think about what is that thing that makes you special, the thing that you're really stand out in, doubling down on that. And it's totally fine to have another place in your portfolio where you have other skills, or as you're showing projects, if they have other things that you've done that are adjacent, you acknowledge that you did those. It's really helpful to have that specialty. And I do think it's probably a challenge for people right now as people have an online presence. For those people that want to tailor their profile, I think it's probably much more tricky to do that.
And then countering, maybe you've got 5 years under your belt. How do you prevent yourself from getting typecast as the guy who can do CAD, the guy who does human factors?
I think that there's two ways to look at that. I think one, if you're looking for another job, really reflecting on the work that you do and thinking about other contributions, whether that's soft skills or other adjacencies. And I think that it can take some work. Think about what you're doing and try to think about it more broadly, and then try to think the thing that you're trying to go into and try to think about that more broadly. Try to see what's the Venn diagram between those two things. I think within a company, it's probably pretty similar. Whatever you're trying to move into, again, look at the Venn diagram between that and what you're doing currently and try to slowly move into those types of experiences or ask the people in your leadership to put you into those positions. But it's definitely something that you should think about. if you're happy in your role, maybe you don't need to think about it, but you should think about in terms of if you want to do that, it's probably something that you need to map out.
Something to bring up in your professional development meeting, assuming you have one.
How did you get into design consulting?
Design consulting is something that I've always wanted to do. When I took that class that I mentioned, the product design and development, I thought, okay, I want to be at a place that really values human centered design, like Apple, or I'd like to work at a consultancy. The reason that I've always wanted to work in a consultancy is that I really love getting a challenge and being able to solve it in a way that it makes sense for people. And what really got me excited about consultancies in general is just this idea that you can work across lots of different industries, always changing, very broad range of peoples and skill sets, often very ambiguous spaces. And this idea where it's not always clear not only what is the solution or if there's a solution, that just was always really exciting to me. It's how my brain works. I like to synthesize lots of different unrelated pieces of information into something that is a cohesive whole. And that's how I found myself drawn to consultancies. I really loved working at Apple, but it was time for something new. And when Frog had an opening, it was something I was really excited about and joined the team.
I feel like you really need to go back to that original class and teach a semester of it and be like, this class changed the trajectory of my life.
Well, it totally did change the trajectory of my life, but also I have gone back to teach, and it is the kind of thing that I teach to the T.
Oh, amazing.
I've taught a class called Human Centered Design, and I teach design classes within the context of entrepreneurship. So once I took that class, it absolutely did change the trajectory of my life.
That's really cool because I feel like, especially in Australia, industrial designers have this amazing skill set, but the majority of them are not entrepreneurial minded, which I think is really such a shame. You will occasionally find them. I'm not saying they're not there, but I would say the norm is not to be entrepreneurial,
Too busy trying to survive.
potentially.
Did you find there was a bit of a contrast between solving human-centered problems that are complex and tricky, which is what consulting is often advertised as, versus racking up the billable hours and getting the job done to center the client, which is, at least in my experience, has been the majority of what consulting has been?
I haven't had that experience actually.
Deeply envious.
I always feel like we never have enough hours to do everything that we want. But I do feel like we're very human centered where we are. The work is to solve that problem, but then to express it in a way that hits that desirability aspect, the feasibility aspect, the viability aspect. And at least at Frog, we always keep those three in mind. We're always bouncing around that Venn diagram to make sure that we're delivering something that's both human centered and hits the other elements of it.
And just maybe pivoting a bit. So you're the creative director, the head of industrial design for North America. What does that role entail?
I typically wear about three hats. The first one is to work on projects with the team and to help to shape our approach to problems, to frame the work, to help formulate a future vision and then connect it to our daily work, help the team see around corners, make sure that we're really delivering on the ambition and aspiration that we've set out to achieve. Another hat is to set the vision for the team, continuously be thinking about where is the discipline moving, how do we stay ahead and relevant, shape what the work actually looks like for us in a way that, again, continues to be relevant and drive value. And then the third thing I think about is our overall business. How do we grow it? I think about where is physical product design evolving and what does that mean for us? I collaborate a lot with other parts of the organization so that we can go further together. Those are the three pillars that I typically work on a daily basis.
I would love to know where you see the future of physical products going.
Oh, I knew you were going to say that as soon as I said it.
I'm sorry, that's such a spicy question. I can't help it. I kind of just love looking into that crystal ball.
In general, I think that we need to think quite a lot about the context of what we're designing for. I think that that's going to continue to be the case, making sure that we're understanding the system into which we're designing, in addition to actually designing the product, making sure that we're communicating the full breadth of what we do, because it's not just styling. We're really thinking about how is culture evolving, how is technology evolving, how our business is evolving. We're constantly reimagining products and experiences for that. As a discipline, that's something that we do and need to really make sure to communicate that. I think that we use shorthands quite a lot for what we do, and it doesn't always capture the breadth and depth of the thinking that I see on our teams all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. I was talking to someone yesterday and I told them what I did, and they're like, oh, wow, nobody ever thinks about that. And I was like, oh, maybe not the people you know. And I was just like so taken aback. I was like, oh, wow.
Yeah, that's something that I've certainly encountered. And I think truly, whenever we get a problem, we decompose it into all of its small pieces. We think about what is the experience like that somebody's having with the product now? What might we be able to do in the future? And really explore those different future scenarios. And then those future scenarios are culturally, where are we moving? Where's technology emerging and where might we be moving? And then what are the capabilities of our clients that if we suggest something, that it's something that they can execute on and deliver? We take that and we put all of that back together. In the beginning parts, we're not always even thinking about what does something look like. It's really what should it be like? What should it behave? How do we expect somebody to live with this? And then we put that expression back into it and lead with the emotion. But it takes a lot of different parts of the brain, a lot of different types of thinking. And I think that's why I find it really exciting. But I think that that breadth often gets lost. And so it's something that's really critical for us to communicate.
Maybe going on a different track. What was the path to becoming a creative director like? And what could others do to achieve something similar?
The path to becoming creative director, definitely delivering great work. That's the first thing. But then you need to evolve from somebody that delivers great work to somebody that can connect that to the goals of the client, to the goals of the business. And it requires having a vision, making decisions, thinking holistically, taking initiative, and ultimately also inspiring others while elevating the team's work. To achieve this, you have to be great at your craft for sure, but also getting comfortable with making decisions and recommendations. When I say that, it's not just saying here's several options and I like this one, but really contextualize why is that a good decision? And so when you go through that process of trying to justify why that's the right decision for the people that you're designing it for the business, for the market, for what's going to be still relevant when it ships, the work that you need to do within yourself and then stand up and say, that's the decision that I think is right. That's what it takes to make that leap. The other thing that comes with that too is developing a point of view on your project so that you can shape the direction, not just execute the project. I think it's also about learning how to work with lots of different disciplines, both within the project and across the business, because as products have evolved and increasingly become smart, there's all these different disciplines that it actually takes to bring that to life. And so being able to relate to everybody and keep your eyes on the prize, I think it's really important while elevating the work of everyone around you.
Would you have documented these events?
I didn't, but I definitely remember certain moments. I remember when it was my responsibility to actually say why I thought something was the right direction. That felt like a big responsibility because whatever decisions you're making are basically changing the strategy for an entire company potentially. And so I always felt like that was a really big responsibility.
Sorry, I meant more like when someone's like, okay, the position's open, we're doing internal interviews, and then you would walk through, I did this.
That wasn't how that process was here. It wasn't something that I applied to as a separate position at Frog. I came in as a fairly junior person on my team. And then as I grew and I think gained these skill sets, it was recognized with the responsibility.
You got the software updates.
Sounds a lot more meritocratic than I am used to.
This is Inna Lobel, Inna Lobel, Inna Lobel, Inna Lobel, Inna Lobel, Inna Lobel, and you are listening to Redacted, 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 Redacted.
Frog is often glamorized as one of the places to be, but what are the key differences, pitfalls, and requirements that separate the experience of working at an organization like Frog from other corporate design agencies or consultancies?
So I think what's really unique about Frog is that we bring together a strategy and design lens right from the beginning of our projects. We're also typically asked to do something that's net new. What that means is very early on, we're always thinking about what are the strategic implications of a design? What is the framework with which we're designing? What's the context? When we recommend something, it typically changes the trajectory of how a company designs or thinks about their product or product line or their users. And so I think that's something that's very special. We are always net new, reimagine, redesign, reinvent. That can be really exciting. In terms of our methodologies, in addition to that, we do a lot of lateral thinking. I think that's something that is very important to the way we work and the way we think. And so we have a tool set of games that whenever we have new people, we try to introduce them to, or if we're working with clients, we usually use this tool set. It's this idea that if we're really trying to reinvent something or go beyond what we currently know, that it's very difficult to get there if you use a linear thinking process. And so with lateral thinking, we actively try to go to the absurd, to other disciplines, to really step outside what somebody might be thinking about, and then bring it back into, okay, well, what would that mean for the user? Is that desirable? Usually it's like, well, not exactly that thing is, but that is actually a really interesting, different way to think about a product or an experience. And then we can bring it back. For example, we were working on a hot water carafe, and some of the example is, okay, often you have to fill this with water. What would happen if you never had to fill it, right? Then you can really get into very different mindsets as you're doing work. That's something that's very special to how Frog works. I think Frog is also always asking why? Why does it have to be that way? So breaking this beginner's mindset.
Preconceived notions.
Yeah, but also being a challenger in the space and pushing against why are we doing it that way? Does it have to be that way? How else could we look at this? Trying to, again, bring it to a new, different place.
I know this word is totally overused, but to really be a disruptor.
It is an overused word, but also I love thinking about creativity and how do we get ideas and how can we push ourselves into those different mindsets. And when I read about it, I think there's a lot of consensus that there is a process and that you can get there. What are those tools you could bring to the table to improve your chances of really being able to say something new in a space?
I'm so jealous. It sounds like a dream. In my job, I get a lot of, oh my God, we love this design. We'd love to go ahead with it. But
It's too niche.
well, it's not that it's even too niche. They're just like, we haven't seen something like this in the market, so we couldn't prove its commerciality. Do something more like what we've already seen. It's always the worst because if they just straight up didn't like it, I'd be like, oh, okay, cool. I've missed the mark on this one. But they're almost always like, it's exactly what we wanted, but we don't want this.
We're not willing to take the risk.
We love it, but we're not willing to take the risk on it. So make it more like theirs.
We get some of that too.
I'm so interested that someone came to Frog to make a hot water carafe. That's not the kind of product that I would have expected you guys to work on.
Yeah, we actually often work on products. For that particular one, we were really looking at what's a new way to use a heating technology in this space. The heating technology that we were working with had some very new properties. And so we're trying to think about, okay, well, how do we express that? How might it change the way that you interact with different products in your life? And so this was one of those. It was a really cool project.
You almost had the solution and then you had to work out where to implement the solution.
I wouldn't say that we had a solution. I would say we had a technology and we're trying to figure out how can we feature this technology and really demonstrate its value. We love those kinds of projects where somebody's like, okay, we have this discovery, we have something new. What are the markets we should go into? This particular one, the client wanted to work in the coffee and tea space. Redacted, 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 redacted.
What's the typical split at Frog between traditional ID work and strategy work? Because we know that Frog has been slowly moving into this more design strategy space. And do you have to manage these competing skill sets at all?
Typically, I see them as being very complementary in our teams. I'd be curious to hear a little bit from you guys on what your definition of strategy work would be.
For me, it's typically just business plan in a more holistic, easy to explain way to the rest of management instead of getting bogged down in all the different aspects of, say, running a business plan or trying to figure out if we have a pain point, what the customer actually wants. So I remember I had a project where I was handed this sinking ship of recyclable thermal packaging to replace polystyrene boxes. And the customer actually really liked the polystyrene boxes. So we had two problems. First off, a customer didn't believe that the product we had worked. And the second one was they just loved those polystyrene boxes. Why would they change? The design strategy aspect for me was one, what are the pain points of this other existing product that we can solve? And then how do we prove to the customer that the product actually works? And those were the two aspects of the product. We did look at costs and stuff, but we mostly looked at how do we help the customer with the rest of their business aspects. They wash these boxes to recycle them. We looked at this as now as not just a solution that's recyclable or good for the environment, it's how do we remove this entire washing system from the customer's production line? And that's how we ended up fitting that product in and winning the contract.
For us, I really think of the work that we do as strategic design because we often have that as part of our process when we're doing an industrial design product. We typically start with understanding what are the goals of the customer, the client, but also what are the pain points that they see. Quite often, we try to actually do some kind of customer discovery. Our favorite way to do that is ethnographic research, where we actually talk to people and we try to understand the context of use of the product and then how they engage with the current product, how they might engage with competitors' products, why they don't use a product like this at all. A lot of our work is really trying to understand that context, even on an industrial design project. On a physical product, we'll quite often staff both an engineer and a designer together so that even we can understand the early implications of the capabilities of what the client can deliver on, but also what's coming down the line that might be relevant for them. And so, actually, all of that is part of our process. And then we go ahead and create what are the different concepts, configurations, and use all of that other knowledge that we've gained to understand, one, to be able to design multiple things that can hit those requirements, but also sometimes we lean into some requirements more or less on different concepts.
And if you have a stakeholder on the customer's team who's a bit apprehensive, how do you walk them through the value proposition of this process as opposed to a simple, give me a brief and we'll do it, execute it, a physical product space?
Typically, the people that come to us are the people that really want us to take this holistic approach. We can, of course, also just execute on the brief. So it depends on what we're being asked for. But I would say that in terms of the types of things that we're asked for, people really appreciate that we would understand what they're looking for on the stakeholder side and what is necessary on the customer side. And often people acknowledge that they don't have the whole picture and they need the help to do that. Is the question about if there's somebody on the team that doesn't see the value in design?
Yeah, because I would expect they would have already come to you for that, but one of them is like, I'm not so sure about this frog business. How would you bring them to the table?
At least in that scenario, you've got peer pressure from everyone else who's already on board.
Yeah, yeah. One way is to try to understand where the reservations are. What is it that they think that they already know? And just engage them in conversation. When somebody comes to us, we typically create an approach that's special for every single person and company that comes to us. We put that together through having conversations with them, trying to understand where they're going, where their industry is going, try to see where we've done that before in other industries that we might be able to show them examples that they can react to. And we really, in that process, engage them about their product and experience. And we try to understand where it is. And we ask questions that are really born out of curiosity, not born out of sales, but really, if we're going to advise somebody on what to do, what do we need to know? In that process, we often demonstrate a very high level of expertise that they feel can offer value or move the needle for them.
I feel like by the time you're knocking on Frog's door, you must have some sort of appreciation for design and the value that it brings.
I think that's true. I also think that sometimes the best way to learn is through experience. And so it's difficult to convince somebody of something. So if they really have a conviction that they have what they need or that they've done it before, I think that that's going to be very difficult to change that. But it is really interesting because when we do user research, often our clients want to be part of that and hear firsthand. And we welcome that because it's really helpful when they hear the clients tell them what they tell them. They often walk away and say, actually, that's really different. We do customer discovery research, but that was a totally different conversation. Sometimes it just takes being in it.
I thought for a minute you were talking about they were part of the actual market research, and I was like, oh no.
That would be a terrible idea.
Because I have clients all the time. I'm like, oh, how have you validated this idea? And they're like, oh yeah, we validated the idea. And I'm like, oh, with who? They're like, with me. And I'm like, oh no. Oh no, that's not validating the idea.
I asked my mum, and she said it was great.
Validating the idea, that's a whole nother thing.
I had a client once who was like, oh yeah, we want to make it out of wood. And I was like, oh, what drew you to this conclusion? Because in my mind, I was like, oh my God, wood is just so much harder to manufacture this small, cheap product. And he's like, oh, because people prefer wood. And I'm like, oh, who are the people that you spoke to? He's like, me, I prefer wood. I was like, oh, okay, that's very different.
We certainly get that as well. And I think part of it is thinking about what battles to fight and also what can we bring to the table. Sometimes we have that, but then when people see alternatives that they get excited about, that's one way to,
Push the needle.
yeah, to put another point of view. Sometimes when you can get data on what it would take to manufacture, that can sway people. One thing that I've learned is to really acknowledge and respect what our clients come to the table with and their expertise and their knowledge. And then really think about that in terms of what other perspectives can I add? What are ways that they might not have looked at a problem before? And I think that's one of the reasons why earlier on I was talking about what are the options, but also thinking about how do we really contextualize those options in a way that helps somebody make a decision. And recognizing that a lot of times our clients are not just making a design decision, they're also making a business decision. And so I've started early on to make sure that I ask, what are you hoping that this is going to do for you as a business? Then they can talk about, oh, we hope that this is going to differentiate us from our competition, or it's going to help us be more relevant and connect to our customers in a different way, or we want to have a best in class experience. Whatever it is, trying to understand how are they going to evaluate this and how are they going to see impact and have that be questions and conversations that we have very early. And even things like, what do you see are roadblocks that might prevent you from being able to achieve what you're trying to achieve with this product, both aspirationally and even internally to the company? Those things coming together is what helps to drive what are the different directions? How do we get people on board? How do we prove value? How do we help them validate that this is the right choice for them?
Yeah, I find that really interesting. I recently had a client come to me with a product half baked. And they were like, oh, this is a product we want to make. We want you to help us with the manufacturing and finishing the design as well. And when I really got down to what their goals were and what they wanted, it was actually to create this product, to create a legacy for the person who had created all of this mathematics in the background. And it actually turned out that the product that they wanted to make wasn't the product at all. And it turned into a completely different thing, which was really interesting. So it went from being a game to a book. And they were like, oh my God, this is actually the best solution because now it has so much more depth and it solves all these background issues that we had while still being able to honor that legacy.
Totally. I think that's so important because it's very difficult to articulate what is it that you want. People will come and say, this is what I want. But we work quite a lot with them to understand what are they hoping that that's going to do for them. And when appropriate, we're able to then say, yeah, there's these other ways that we could approach that. And we always ask them if they're open to it, because if they're not open to it, that's another thing where we can save a lot of time by not pursuing those. But if we can learn that they have flexibility, that's a place where I think we could really take them to another place.
You've gone from a research assistant to a department head. It's certainly a great story, though it seems these days it's a career pathway that's increasingly rare. Is there anything you think could be done to reverse that trend, or any advice you might share on someone who wants to repeat a similar pathway?
For me, research assistant, that was something that I was doing as part of my graduate school career. At the Media Lab, when you are a student there, you are also a research assistant. And so you're doing research work within your research group. The way to go to become a department head, for example, is similar to what we had talked about a little bit earlier, which is really being able to take ownership of the ideas that you're putting forward and really try to understand how can you make decisions between which are the right ideas and contextualize that and make that recommendation. And then as you grow in your career, the projects that you work on have more dimensions. You're working with more people, more disciplines. And I think as you practice and the projects that you work on grow, I think it's a natural progression.
I feel like there's also this ability to have those soft skills to be able to communicate the solutions and to communicate the strategy and to communicate the needs. That is something that really puts leaders ahead as well. I feel like often there can be so much focus on these hard skills that you're learning and you're crafting. And, oh, if I just get better at these hard design skills, I'm going to get promoted. But that's not always necessarily how it goes.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think it's really about the soft skills and contextualizing the work and understanding what other people are working on and what they're trying to achieve and building those bridges. I wholeheartedly agree that it's those other skills that are so important when you're really trying to bring something to market.
Do you have any examples of how you've understood how the client makes money and then articulate how your process will fit into that and advance it?
There might be different things that you need to do. For example, if they're trying to differentiate or if a company is trying to increase their market share and go into a new space, it's helpful then to highlight how you're going to look at the different spaces and see how it's evolving and looking at what competitors are doing, trying to look at what's happening in that space, what are the expectations of the customers, and really painting a picture for why that understanding is going to be helpful. And also looking at their current product and doing a little bit of comparison for them of where they are and where they could go. That analysis early on is something that can be really helpful to give confidence that whatever you're recommending and the process that you're recommending to get there is going to move the needle. Redacted, 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 redacted.
What would you say is a weakness of Frog's design culture and what are their strengths?
I think the strengths are a curiosity, challenging the status quo, and really trying to understand the why, the system that we're trying to design for, and really trying to get to the right answer and excellent craft across the board. In terms of weaknesses, we're in a consulting atmosphere, so a lot of really tight deadlines while also trying to maintain that high quality of work, which I think is maybe a little bit tough for work life balance during moments of the project.
As in, like, the weakness is work life balance or a lack thereof?
Yeah, I think so.
And what would you say that you guys excel at that no one else can?
I think that challenging the status quo is really a place that we excel at, but also marrying that strategic vision with the design and really creating a holistic vision and product because we have so many different disciplines that we can lean into. And so if we think that the answer is something that needs something that we hadn't anticipated, we can pull them in. And so we're really nimble in that way as well.
You got all these wizards on tap.
Wizards on tap. I love that. I'm gonna write that down. Wizards on tap. Love it.
Thanks for coming on the show today, Inna. We really enjoyed you sharing your story with us, and I'm sure the audience has too.
No worries. Thank you guys very much. Really appreciate your time.
Don't forget to check the show notes for links to anything we've mentioned, where to follow the show, where to see more of Inna and Frog's work, and a link to our sponsor, Better Future. But until next time, this has been Redacted.
The number you have dialed has not been recognized. Please check and try again. The number you have dialed has been
Redacted. Redacted.